What happened to the game I loved? Back when Star Rail came out in 2023, only 2 years ago, I loved it. The theme, the combat, the characters, the lore, I really liked it. I didn't take it serious at first, but I was super invested, especially with like the Aeons, the paths, and all that. And I loved me some of that good turn-based combat. And at the time when this came out, I think I just finished playing Persona 5, and with how similar Star Rail combat is with Persona, I was immediately hooked. And remember, this game came out 2 years ago, I think, and I loved the Penacony arc, the environment of it and all that, but I did notice something that didn't seem like a big problem at the time, but now that problem really ballooned now. Power creep, pay to win, bloat, and it's just not fun to play. To this day of making this video, I have not logged in for almost a month. I only logged in to get like the free Don Hung thing, and to do whatever this Memory of Chaos is for this video, and then I immediately closed it. But for me, there's a lot of things that I found unenjoyable. Yes, I'm playing Sonic Racing Cross Worlds. I don't want to watch Castor's ult 100 more times in the next 10 minutes. I need the tickets to get all the achievements in the game. Deal with it. I think Amphorius could have been a decent arc. Penacony was peak, and I never expected Amphorius to be better. I did expect, or at least, that it was at least engaging and interesting enough to still keep me hooked throughout the entire arc, because although Penacony was a great story, great environment, great characters and all that, I did notice that it was getting a bit too much storytelling. There's a difference between the content of the story and with the way you tell that story. It's like telling a joke. The joke itself can be a really bad joke, but if you present it in a funny way, then it's funny, and vice versa. If the joke itself is really good, but you stumbled through the joke and it gets awkward, then it's a bad joke. And so, I'm not saying Penacony was badly told, but there were signs of certain sections having too much talking than doing. Star Rail is a video game, and funny enough, sometimes I want to play the game. Now, I think it was like the Memory Zone place and the Sunday's Theater were great dungeon-like areas, and I liked those. And along with Sunday's narrating some like monologue speech or whatever while you're going through his theater dungeon thing, could have been done better, but that was headed in the right direction. So yes, Penacony had some sections where they did talk too much, like with the adventuring in that one section, but there were also sections where I was actually doing something, whether fighting enemies, bosses, or whatever, figuring out puzzles, navigating through dungeon-like areas. It still felt like a game. But then with Amphorius, I think the storytelling was god-awful, and they knew it was god-awful because they added a skip button. Now, I do think the lore is actually cool, right? Because the Titans of Amphorius can be loosely related to like Greek gods, and these Titans are basically affiliated with a certain path. Like Zagreus is related to the Elation path, I believe, and Strife is with destruction, I think. But the problem is, there was a lot of setup with this. I didn't have a problem. I know other people just kind of felt stupid, and no one really wants to play a game to feel stupid, right? So there was a lot of setup that they slowly explained more of the lore throughout the updates. So if you were confused, you had to stay confused for a month or two. And on top of that, Amphorius itself is kind of like its own isolated planet. They don't know about Aeons and other planets whatsoever. They have their own terminology and things, and concepts like Aeons are very loosely tied to whatever is outside of Amphorius. And so you're learning everything like it's day one of playing this game, and nothing really connected to the outside lore until much later into the arc. And by that time, I was already tuned out. Every main quest was a yap fest. I remember on one of the main quests that I streamed, I think it was the Castor's update, I think it took me 6 hours to complete, but only had 3 battles in that 6-hour quest line, 2 normie fights, and 1 boss fight that I obliterated in less than a minute with a terrible comp. Yeah, sure, Castor was cool and all that, but really? 3 battles in total. What was I doing the entire time? Yapping. And I remember when there used to be like a companion missions where the mission wasn't tied to the main story, but it did flesh out that particular character's background. My favorite was probably March's and Jean Lou's companion missions. But with Amphorius, I think I read somewhere that they moved away from having these separate companion missions and made them into the main story questline instead, which I think to me was not good after playing the majority of the Amphorius arc. To explain a character's background, there really isn't a lot of doing. There are some exceptions, like if you were to hypothetically do a companion mission for Firefly, there would be a lot of bugs to kill. But like March's companion mission, even Sparkle's, I would say, it was more about the content of the story or lore rather than how to tell it. But with main quest lines, for any video game really, I think storytelling is more important than the content of the story. Because if you can't tell the story, then who cares if it was a riveting tale? It sucked. It goes back to the joke analogy I used earlier. If you can't tell a joke, then the joke sucks. So I think with the emphasis on the character's background, which is an emphasis on the story lore, and with Amphorius itself being like a whole like different entity from other worlds in Star Rail, which makes sense in the lore, but like you still have to build up the world of Amphorius, which means more lore. There's absolutely no room of storytelling to make it interesting and fun to play. When it did, specifically with Finon, and then it did like a whole twist in the story, it was all a simulation. And it was just too much, it got too confusing. I'm sure for the lore wizards who's 20 novels deep into the dictionary and glossaries, like, oh wow, this is so cool, this is amazing! But considering there's a lot of things to know that aren't visually memorable, the whole twist just made me angry that there was more layers to the story. This was not the feeling for a game I had for like Expedition 33. It's pretty clear, very simple in what you had to do with the first 2 acts. Yes, there were some lore things that branched out, dots connect and all that, but when the story flip happened like later in the game, it never made me angry because I was already engaged in the prior 20 hours of the game because the storytelling was really good. So when that thing happened with Finon, I just... Look, some of the characters from Amphorius are cool, but it's just not fun watching a slideshow anime for 6 hours straight every month. Another thing I don't like is power creep. Every live service game has power creep, but I've never seen a game that has this bad of a power creep. I talk trash about Genshin all the time, but at least I can still use Hu Tao whenever I feel like it. I don't think I can use Sela against the Lance of Fury god unless I hard spec into it, and I mean like hard spec into it. I saw how Boot Hill got instantly power crept by Firefly in the Penacony arc, and I'm pretty sure Firefly's banner was immediately after Boot Hill's, so not only they don't have a problem that a character expires at the top of the meta so fast, characters that you liked are just not usable at all unless you put tons of efforts into them, like getting Eidolons, matching light cones that are superimposed and all that, to make them usable. Sela cannot be used in the endgame. Donhung and Bibiter Lune cannot be used in the endgame, even with Sparkle. Silverwolf used to be really good, but now isn't really needed as much because you got characters like Rapid and Nax, I think, that ignore elemental weakness when attacking. They had to buff Silverwolf because the power creep was that bad, and then proceeded to sell her a rerun to make more money off that. Then you got Castros with a passive trait that is active even when Castros is not on the team. The trait itself isn't too bad, it's just a free resurrect, and in the current meta, if you have a character die, well, you were going to lose even if you res that character 5 times in a row. Because the amount of damage some of these bosses dish out and the time length of these battles too, having a free res is nice, but I wouldn't say it's broken. But what about the next passive trait? Is it going to be like summoning Lux's arrows every turn or free action turns given when certain conditions meet? This is a very slippery slope, and with how brutal the meta is, if you want to continue in the endgame, you have to get these characters. The endgame is always tuned to the meta, which isn't unique to this game. I think a lot of other games have their endgames tuned to the meta, but when you have a disparity between Sela and Finon, or even Acheron and Finon, it makes it feel like the meta characters are the only usable characters. And you can just say, oh, sounds like your butt hurt you didn't get Finon. I didn't even try because he was a guy. But remember, when Acheron was the best character, remember when everyone was like, no way, she gets power crept, right? Right? Finon is going to get power crept. Maybe not as fast as other characters, but it will be a lot sooner than what you can imagine. I remember when Donhung IL came out and I was doing like, I think it was like 30k damage, and I was like, wow, this is the most damage I have ever seen. Then I got Acheron and I was doing like 70k and I was like, wow, this is the most damage I have ever seen. Then I got the light cone for Acheron and I was doing 150k and I was like, wow, this is the most damage I've ever seen. Then I got Casterus and I was doing 200k and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most damage I've ever seen. Now, I don't know what Finon does because I don't have him. But it's probably the most damage you've ever seen. Surely it won't happen again. Another thing is that the last 4-star character was Moza, and I think it's been over a year since he came out. Like, why do you think they're not making more 4-stars? They just want to squeeze more money out of us. They could have easily made a 4-star variant of Finon at the very start of Amphorius. I think that would have helped with the story of like his ascension into being like a core bearer, whatever happened. And it would have been cool to use a 4-star Finon for story purposes up to his 5-star final form or whatever happened in that patch. That's such an easy one to do, but I don't know. Why didn't they do that? Then they try to squeeze more money out of people by having an option to buy Cyrene's bow for $300 just so we can have like a slightly different animation. $30 Membini for the Trailblazer. Money, 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 money. For me, I have this mindset with live service games. If I feel like the game devs love me, then I'm more willing to spend money. I don't mind paying for skins in Marvel Rivals because they add a lot of cool stuff, game mode, skins, and just free content in general. It felt like I was being loved, and so I was okay with spending money. But with Valorant, the state of the game isn't the greatest. They add things where its only purpose is to make people spend more money. It's just not great. Therefore, I'm not inclined to spend money. And for Star Rail, its current state is not fun, it doesn't feel good to play, and it kind of feels like certain things and features are kind of a... And look, maybe I'll play the first patch of the next arc, maybe, or I hope it's 8 star. And if I still see the same problems and it seems like nothing is being fixed, then I'll probably uninstall the game. I don't want the game to feel like a chore just so it can be playable in some way. I'd rather invest my time and mind into other games like Wuthering Waves is one, even the Persona gacha game, I really want to get back into that. Or actual real games, like maybe I want to replay Final Fantasy 15, maybe even try out the new Mario Kart World. But having this like looming threat over me of, oh, you need to grind for Jade so you can play the fun part of the game every time there's a new patch, it needs to be worth it. Which so far, even 8 star or whatever the next planet is, if it doesn't improve in these areas, I'm just done with the game altogether. That'll do it for me for today. Make sure to like and subscribe as my goal is to get to 500 subs by the end of the month. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I appreciate you guys for watching.